Welcome back, folks, to another edition of WrestleRant, where I review pay-per-views that I've watched on the WWE Network for your viewing pleasure. In this video, I will be talking about WrestleMania 21. I know I promised this video a few weeks ago before WrestleMania 30, but due to all the craziness and busyness surrounding that week, I was unable to finish the pay-per-view, therefore I was unable to put up this video. However, I just recently finished watching it. Great show. We'll be breaking it down for you right here, right now. So kicking off the show, we had Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero, the first time in WrestleMania history that we had two tag team champions going against one another. It was a month prior at No Way Out that Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, I believe, defeated Eminem to win the WWE Tag Team Championships. Or no, I think it was the Bashams. And it was Eminem who beat them for the gold. That's what it was. Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, WWE Tag Team Champions going into this matchup. Not really much of a build-up, just more of, respect for one another, going against one another, both face versus face. A very good opener to the show, a very good match overall. I think it could have used a few more minutes, and although the fans didn't really have an incentive to cheer one over the other, and so Rey Mysterio ultimately went over. Good win for him. He was not a world champion at this point in time. It was a year later, actually, coincidentally enough, in the memory of Eddie Guerrero, that he won the World Heavyweight Championship. So he was still an up-and-comer at this point in time, so it was good for him to go over. Eddie Guerrero sold the frustration, shook Rey Mysterio's hand afterwards, but would eventually turn heel, and those two would have a very long feud for the rest of 2005. But regardless, though, before I go any further, let me just mention this. I watched the first half of this show a few weeks ago, and then I just finished it up just recently, so my memory may be little shady when it comes to the first few matches on the show, but I'll try my best to recollect, try to remember as much as I can in regards to the first few matches on the card for WrestleMania 21. But anyway, very good match to open up the show between Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. The right person went over. Like I said, the fans didn't really have an incentive to cheer one guy over the other, but even still, a very good match to kick off Mania. So up next, we had the Money in the Bank ladder match the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, I should mention, pitting Edge, Chris Jericho, Christian, Kane, Chris Benoit, and Shelton Benjamin all against one another in a shot for the World Heavyweight Championship on Monday Night Raw. This was a Raw exclusive match at first, became interpromotional the very next year at WrestleMania, when it also included SmackDown stars. So this is Raw exclusive this year. 6 of the brand's top stars, up-and-coming stars. We had former world champions, current champions, and Shelton Benjamin being the Intercontinental Champion, and future world champions as well. But that being said, though, this is a very, very good matchup. Probably one of the best Money in the Bank ladder matches in history. It's hard to beat out the original. 6 great workers. Shelton Benjamin had a show-stealing performance in this match. I love the spot when he ran up the ladder, and I think clothesline Chris Jericho right off the top of it, which is great. Shelton Benjamin at this point in time was red hot. I'll never understand why he was never pushed further up the card. I know his mic skills were never that strong, but a run with the World Championship over on SmackDown should have been in the cards. But regardless, though, he was an up-and-comer at the time, had a great showing in this matchup. Jericho, the innovator of this contest, also had a very good showing. Chris Benoit was also one to watch out for. I originally watched this pay-per-view, or this match, rather, on the Money in the Bank Anthology DVD that was released last year in 2013. So any commentary in regards to Benoit was taken out completely. So watching this back on the network where it's supposed to be unedited, and there is commentary in reference to Benoit. I was happy about that, and he was bleeding all over the place in this matchup. He was just all out, balls to the wall crazy, jumping off the top rope and doing headbutts off the ladder. Edge ended up hitting him in the arm with a steel chair, and Edge ended up ascending the ladder and picking up the victory. Benoit and Edge would continue their feud from this point forward, and Edge from this point forward would be known as a main event star, going on a feud with Matt Hardy, win the WWE Championship from John Cena about 10 or so months later, and from that point forward, they rated our superstars. So this match really served as the launching pad for Edge going into the main event scene. The kind of boost that he needed. He was already contending for the World Championship on multiple occasions before this night, but this really catapulted him to the top of the card and becoming World Championship material. So great win for Edge and a great match overall. So 2 great matches back to back. And serving as the filler segment in between the next match and this one, we had a segment with Eugene coming out, just kind of talking about his favorite WrestleMania moments and the midgets from WrestleMania 3, I think it was. And then out comes Muhammad Hassan and Sean Daivari. Now, at this point in time, Hassan and Daivari were one of the hottest acts in the company. Thinking back on it, not being a fan at the time, because like I said in the past, I wasn't watching these live. Watching them live and then watching them back nearly 10 years later is an extremely different thing. But just thinking back, had I been a fan at the time, I would have been wondering, why isn't Hassan on this card? I mean, they were hell-bent on pushing this guy to the top almost immediately. It was a few months later on SmackDown, and he was almost put in contention for the World Championship. So you would think that he'd be put on the WrestleMania card in an actual match and not just a segment. And all this segment ended up giving him some rub, and I'll get to that in a second. You would think that he'd be in the Money in the Bank ladder match or whatever else. I guess they didn't want to have him lose his first match at WrestleMania. But either way, though, you would think that it would put him in a more prominent position on the card at WrestleMania. But regardless, so he comes out, attacks Eugene, and then out comes Hulk Hogan, who was just inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame one night prior, to a huge pop from the Los Angeles crowd. He didn't get all too physical. I mean, he punched him and kicked him a few times, didn't do the big boot, and that was pretty much it. But he tossed him out of the ring, started posing for like 5 minutes, and I loved it. Being a Hulkamaniac, I enjoyed every single minute of this. Hulk Hogan standing tall to end the segment. And we would also see him later on in the night when they brought out the WWE Hall of Famers. But it was a filler segment, but it was fun for what it was. The crowd loved Hulk Hogan. Hassan got a nice rub out of this, being involved in the same segment with Hulk Hogan, of all people, the immortal icon, on the grandest stage of them all, and would go on to feud with Hulk Hogan going forward when him and Daivari teamed up against Hogan and Shawn Michaels at the following month's Backlash pay-per-view. So he got a big rub out of this, and that was very nice, and that's the important thing. So a fun segment to serve as the filler in between the Money in the Bank ladder match and this next matchup between The Undertaker and Randy Orton. Now, this is a great feud, and this was just getting started at the time. Randy Orton had just turned heel, and this feud would go on for the rest of 2005, pretty much. It would go on until December of 2005, when it culminated or ended in the Hell in a Cell matchup at Armageddon. So I think this is probably the single best feud of 2005. If it wasn't for Batista and Triple H. But regardless, though, you would think that this matchup would be higher on the card. But we had so many other marquee matches on the show. I guess I understand why it was this early on the card. It was only the third matchup. But even still, though, Randy Orton, I think, was rumored to win this matchup against Undertaker. Maybe Undertaker wanted Randy Orton to win here. I'm not exactly sure what the plan was, but Undertaker went over. But even so, though, a very, very good showing for Orton, who just a few months prior prematurely won the World Heavyweight Championship, lost it a month later, hadn't been really doing anything for the last 6 months, and then to show up at WrestleMania and have this great match with The Undertaker, in my personal opinion, as they wrote in an article a few weeks ago, his best WrestleMania showing to date. Randy Orton had a great showing against The Undertaker, proved that he can hang with the main event stars of the WWE, proving that he is indeed a future world champion. I don't count his first reign because it wasn't all that great anyway. But he definitely showed that he could hang in there with the top guys like The Undertaker, hence why their feud continued on months later over on the SmackDown brand and for the rest of 2005. So Undertaker continued his streak, and I think if there was any one match that Undertaker should have lost, and I mean, as I'm recording this, Undertaker streak is now over. So if any of the guys in the last 10 years that should have broken the streak, it should have been Randy Orton. It would have catapulted him to huge superstardom in the WWE almost immediately, and I think it would have been better than Brock Lesnar. But that's my opinion, and that's a rant for a whole other video. But even still, though, a great match. So up until this point, we had a lot of very, very good matches on the show, and definitely deserving of the best pay-per-view, one of the best pay-per-views ever at this point in time. So 3 great matches, a fun segment. The next matchup wasn't all that good, but I do excuse it because it was the obligatory get the divas on the card kind of matchup. It pitted Trish Stratus, the women's champion at the time, against Christy Hemme with Lita in her corner. So I don't know if the original idea was to do Stratus versus Lita, who had been feuding for years upon years and had been feuding basically their entire WWE careers. So I don't know if the plan was for them to face off at WrestleMania with the women's title on the line. But Lita was eventually injured. She had suffered a knee injury, so Christy Hemme took her place in this feud. And the feud is basically built off that Christy Hemme posed for Playboy earlier on, so that's what they were kind of feuding about, and Trish got jealous, and the women's championship was on the line. Christy Hemme was, by God, fucking awful in the ring, and there was no surprise that this match was a dud. Lots of botches. Trish Stratus tried to carry her to a fine matchup, and it was mediocre at best. It was pretty bad, to be honest with you, but it wasn't like I would shoot myself in the head if it was that bad, but it was okay. It was okay. By Christy Hemme standards, this was okay. I was always mind-boggled why she retired in 2009, because I know she suffered a career-ending injury, But at the time, I just didn't realize how bad she was in the ring. And I just started watching TNA at the time she retired, so I never really got to see her in the ring all that much. But on her own in a singles match, not good. The backstage role, or whatever she's doing now in TNA, is a much better fit for her than in the ring, because this was a terrible matchup. Thankfully, it was kept short and sweet and brief. Stratus went over, still the women's champion. End of that. It was good in the sense it was a nice buffer match after the red hot Taker versus Orton match. So it served its purpose in that sense, and got the Divas on the show too. So win-win situation, even though the match wasn't all that great. Up next, we had Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels. Now, I had heard rave reviews for this matchup from several people. I'd yet to watch it. A fantastic matchup that lived up to my personal expectations. It had been built up great. The video package was great leading up to this matchup. Kurt Angle had a great showing. Shawn Michaels had a great showing, which didn't come as any surprise, given that he is Mr. WrestleMania after all. These two pitting Raw versus SmackDown against one another for brand supremacy. A fantastic matchup. Definitely an underrated matchup at WrestleMania, in my opinion. You talk about the best WrestleMania matches of all time. This definitely has to be among the top matches on your list. Great matchup. My only complaint was that it wasn't one of the leading matches, and then it wasn't for a world championship. And I think the best part was that Michaels tapped out clean. Angle didn't even have to cheat. Angle won clean in this match. He forced Michaels to tap out, and they ended up having a rematch at Vengeance a couple months later, and had an Iron Man match at the end of 2005. So 2005, I think, was kind of a year for lengthy feuds. We had Batista versus Triple H, Cena versus JBL, Orton versus Taker, Eddie versus Mysterio, and of course Michaels versus Angle. So we had a lot of feuds running for over the course of 2005. But Kurt Angle going clean here, which I thought was great. A great way to resume the feud after the baby faces going over in a very face-heavy show, like WrestleMania usually is. So to get Angle going over here, I thought was great, and clean no less too. So I thought that was awesome. So an amazing matchup. So like I said before, up until this point, a fantastic show, definitely deserving of one of the top five WrestleManias of all time. Those two final matches would kind of sway people's opinions on that, but I'll get to that in a minute. So up next we had Piper's Pit with Rowdy Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan. Pretty good for what it was. I mean, it was kind of nostalgic. I mean, I guess they should have had this at WrestleMania 20, since it was the 20th anniversary of WrestleMania. But Hulk Hogan wasn't on good terms with the company at the time. I don't think was Piper at WrestleMania 20? I don't think so. I know he was at 19, but he wasn't at 20. But so it's kind of celebrating the first WrestleMania, since they were in the first matchup. Paul Orndorff was also in this class of 2005. So everyone involved in the first WrestleMania main event, with the exception of Mr. T, who was inducted this past year at WrestleMania, was involved at this WrestleMania. So this Piper's Pit was good for what it was, just a bit of nostalgia. Carlito came out, got a bit of rub from being in the same ring with, did I say Hulk Hogan? Why did I say Hulk Hogan? I meant Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm sorry, I meant Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was in this segment with Rowdy Roddy Piper. Hogan was in the segment earlier on in the show. Okay, I'm sorry, I botched that. Stone Cold Steve Austin was in this segment with Rowdy Roddy Piper. Just talking their first ever confrontation. So a very, very good confrontation here between these two. Stone Cold just bad-mouthing Roddy Piper. Piper doing the exact same thing to him. So a very cool confrontation between two of the most controversial and outspoken figures in the WWE. So that was pretty cool. I don't know why I said Hogan versus Piper. Hogan and Piper. Maybe I'm just thinking this past year WrestleMania. I don't know. But even still, though, a very good segment. We had Carlito come out and just, interrupt and just say his basic lines about being cool. Was about to spit the apple in the face of both of the legends, and Piper took it away from him. Slapped Carlito right across the face. Stone Cold followed up with a stunner. Piper and Stone Cold were celebrating, and Stone Cold with beers, of course, with a beer bash. And, of course, Stone Cold stunned him as well. So, a fun segment serving as filler in between these two matches. We had a lot of filler segments on the show. I guess it couldn't fill up the full 6 hours, 4 hours. 6 hours would be god-awful. But, 4 hours on the show. I guess it couldn't fill it up all that much because, let's see here, they had how many matches? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know. Maybe they could have added more matches. I know WrestleMania 20 had many, many matches, and that went 5 hours. And that went on god too long. But even still, though, if you're going to have a filler segment, you might as well make it entertaining in this matchup. Or this segment was definitely entertaining, involving Austin, Piper, and Carlito. Carlito got a good rub out of this, even though he was never the big star he should have been. But he got a nice rub out of it regardless. So up next, we had Akabono versus Big Show in a sumo wrestling match. And this is probably the worst point of the show. These two, the pre-match ritual of sumo wrestling was longer than the match itself, which is only about a minute and a half. And I'm thinking to myself, as they're getting ready to do this thing, like, why the fuck is this happening? Because it was going on way too long. And no disrespect to sumo wrestling, but it has no place in pro wrestling. It made no sense. It was stupid. I don't know what the build to this matchup was. I just watched the events. I don't watch the build up. It had no build up to it. I mean, in terms of like the video package or anything. So I had no idea why this matchup took place. Big Show a year earlier was in a U.S. Championship match with John Cena. Big Show has done it all at WrestleMania, but this is the lowest of the lows. I had no desire of seeing him in a fucking diaper, or the other guy for that matter. Just a very disturbing sight, and thankfully it was kept short and sweet, but if it was only going to be a minute and a half, then what the fuck was the point? If you're going to have this shit, then take it off and give more time to one of the other main matches on the show. You know what I mean? I give more time to Eddie versus Mysterio or Taker versus Orton, and instead of this bullshit, because this served no purpose at all. Akebono went over, so you don't even have your own star go over. It was just stupid. It was a waste of time. But up next, we had John Cena versus JBL for the WWE Championship. The notorious matchup for Cena winning his first WWE Championship. So before I even get into reviewing these top two matches on WrestleMania for the world titles, I read the reviews of WrestleMania 21 from other people, and a lot of people believe that this would have been one of the top WrestleManias of all time had the top two matches failed. They were rather flat. People didn't enjoy them. And I'll get to the world title match in a minute. But so that was kind of my mindset going into this matchup, and I could definitely see why people thought this was not the matchup it should have been. It was a good matchup. It wasn't bad at all, but it was pretty boring for the most part. They were putting on rest holds, and then all just out of nowhere, the finish wasn't even built towards. GBL went for the clothesline from hell, missed it. John Cena follows up with the FU, gets a 1-2-3, new champion. That was pretty much it. It had a nice video package, it had a nice build-up and whatnot, but the matchup itself was very underwhelming, especially for the first matchup that John Cena won his WWE Championship in. So it was very odd. Their Unquit match a couple months later at Judgment Day blew this matchup out of the water by far. But even still, though, this matchup was very strange. It was definitely not the matchup it should have been. John Cena went over. That's the important thing. He got a nice, very good pop from the crowd when he won the championship from JBL, who would have been reigning as WWE Champion since June of the year prior. So the longest reigning SmackDown champion in history, or longest reigning WWE champion in SmackDown history. But that being said, though, kind of a flat matchup. It definitely wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. It was, like I said, flat. But John Cena went over. That's the important thing. Main event matchup saw Batista versus Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship. Batista, the Royal Rumble winner for 2005, breaking away from Evolution just weeks prior. So this matchup had great build-up going into it, a lot of history, a lot of story. Batista being built up as the next big thing in the WWE, all due respect to Brock Lesnar. But a very, very good matchup in my opinion. I can see why people shit on all over the WWE title match between JBL and Cena. But this match, I think, was very, very good. I had seen it before multiple times on the Batista DVD. Batista, The Animals Unleashed, or the older one from 2009, not the new one. I don't know why they're coming out with another Batista DVD anyway. But regardless, a very, very good matchup, very entertaining. Early on, it was solid, but the pace wasn't all that great. It was plodding for the most part. But they built towards the finish very, very well. They got extreme, even though it wasn't a no disqualification match. Ric Flair ringside he got involved. The referee was down at one point. They involved steel chairs. They involved the world title belt. Triple H was bleeding he had a crimson mask all over his face. Looked like he was wearing a crimson mask. A very bloody brawl between these two. So it had a nice mix of wrestling. It had a nice mix of brawling. The story was definitely there. The crowd was very suspensed into the near falls after Triple H hit one pedigree and Batista kicked out. And after the Batista bomb and secured the 1-2-3 count, becoming the new World Heavyweight Champion, a great moment solidifying the career of the Animal Batista, who had went on to become a 6-time World Champion in the WWE. So overall, a very, very good matchup in my opinion. It wasn't fantastic, but I definitely think it deserves more credit than people give it. I thought it was a very good main event, solidified the main event status of Batista, as well as John Cena for his WWE title match. So overall, I thought this was a great show. Definitely better than WrestleMania 20, which is only known for its 2 top world title matches. And it's funny because WrestleMania 21 was almost the exact opposite. It's known for its awesome undercard, and this is what WrestleMania 30 should have been, with a very good, well-built undercard, but not at all. We just had fucking multi-main matches and all that stuff. Although WrestleMania was phenomenal, and the main event matches made up for it, but you know what I mean. But this isn't about WrestleMania 30. WrestleMania 21 was very, very good in building towards the future. You would think WrestleMania 20 would have done that, but the guys involved in those matches and that went over, Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, the two world champions at the time, were in the first two matches on the card of WrestleMania 21. So that being said, I thought this was a very, very good WrestleMania in building up the careers of Rey Mysterio, John Cena, Batista, who else? Edge, and Randy Orton. Randy Orton was the only one of those guys that didn't go over on the show, though I think it could have helped him had he did go over. But even still, he looked very strong in defeat. It didn't really matter all that much anyway. So the show was important in building towards the future, and all of those guys that I just mentioned went on to become world champions and were the faces of the WWE for a number of years in the years to come. So yeah, I really enjoyed this WrestleMania. The undercard was very, very solid. The JBL and John Cena matchup was underwhelming in my opinion, but the title change made up for it. Batista versus Triple H, very, very good. If there's one matchup you have to go out of your way to see from this show, it would have to be Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, a phenomenal matchup. Although Mysterio versus Eddie was a nice matchup, Taker versus Orton was very strong. Batista versus H I enjoyed as well, like I said. And that was pretty much it. Everything else, and the Money in the Bank match too, which is great. Akibona versus Big Show was shit. Stratus Hemi was garbage, but Stratus carried her to a fine matchup, so it was okay. And the appearances from Hulk Hogan were nice too, and Roddy Piper and Stone Cold, so they had the star power there as well. This was all about WrestleMania 21 going Hollywood since it was in the Staples Center, but it was just fun. It was just weird when they announced the attendance of 21,000, and I know that's the capacity of that arena, but just thinking back on it, now they fit maybe 70,000, 80,000 people in an arena every year for WrestleMania, and now we get 21,000 on the show, which I thought was very, very strange. But even still, though, the crowd was hot all night long, except for with the exception of John Cena versus JBL, but they came alive for the finish. So, like I said before, a great WrestleMania. If you have the time, go back and watch it. I won't be reviewing as many WrestleManias now that WrestleMania season is over, but I started this WrestleMania before WrestleMania 30, so I figured I'd finish it. So now that WrestleMania season is over, if you have any thoughts on any pay-per-views you want me to review on this channel for WrestleRant on the WWE Network, make sure to leave a comment below. You can tweet me on Twitter at WrestleRant, Facebook, Graham Jason Matthews, all that great stuff. I will try to watch the pay-per-view as soon as I can. Pay-per-view or weekends are usually the best time to watch the pay-per-views. That's when I have more time. I have more freedom to watch it. During the week, I'm a bit busy, so I can't do it then. So, yeah, just leave a comment below with a pay-per-view you want me to watch, whether it be WCW, WWE, ECW, doesn't matter to me. All great stuff. I love going back and watching wrestling because that's just the avid wrestling fan that I am. So, with all that being said, guys, thanks for watching. Really do appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe, like, leave a comment, all that great stuff. Very much appreciated, like I said before. And this is Graham Jason Matthews signing out. See you next week, guys, and thanks again.